How do you make the reader feel emotion? It is possible to create such powerful emotion through words and through stories, but in this video I'm going to explain exactly how you can create that extraordinary emotion in the mind of the reader. But if you're new here and you love stories and you want to tell your own story, start now by subscribing and hitting the bell, and I'll keep you updated with future videos. In this video I'm going to focus on 6 different emotions, what I believe to be the 6 most important emotions in storytelling. These are fascination, sadness, fear, surprise, contentment, and anger. In almost every fiction book, the reader will feel all of these emotions on some level, and I would say that this is almost the only thing that will really determine the success of a story. If you think about your favorite film or your favorite book, why is it your favorite? Because the story has conjured up such powerful emotion within you. I've listed each emotion in order of how important they are, going from the most important to the least important. So without wasting any more time, let's start with what I believe is the first and most important emotion: fascination. Fascination is the most confusing and difficult to invoke in readers. This is why those stories that are able to create such a high level of fascination are so successful. Fascination is the thing that hooks the readers in, that makes them think, wow, that's something. The only way to create fascination in the mind of the reader is to create something new. A lot of people try to copy successful writers like J.K. Rowling, George R.R. Martin, or Stephen King, and they try to replicate the way that they write to create similar ideas. But the only way to create fascination is to think of a new idea. But no one knows where ideas come from. But the more you think about your story, the more ideas you'll have. Most ideas are rubbish ideas, but this is how you know whether you have a good idea or not. If your idea sticks around in your head for a long period of time, for example for a few days or weeks, then it probably means that it's a good idea. Emotion plus information equals a long-term memory. So if your idea sticks in your head for a long period of time, then it is probably charged with emotion and will probably fascinate your readers. J.K. Rowling has had arguably the most fascination it is possible to create in the readers. She spent 5 years writing the first Harry Potter book, and during that time she would commute on the train and she would think of ideas for her book, and when she got a new idea that fascinated her, she would run home and write it down. In The Name of the Wind, one of my favourite books, I was fascinated by the main character, the writing style, and the highly unique magic system, because they were just so unique. This is why Disney and Pixar movies are so wonderful, because every single one of them is so unique. Sure, they have a lot of princess movies, but most of their ideas have never been seen before, and it is almost impossible to say what exactly causes fascination in the reader. But if you think of a good idea, whether that is for a weapon system, a character, or plot, and if that idea sticks in your head, then it will probably also fascinate your readers. The second most powerful emotion is sadness. When it comes to sadness, I almost immediately think of 2 movies, Interstellar and my favourite movie of all time, A Monster Calls. What can we learn about these 2 movies? How do they make people physically cry? If you want to create sadness, then it's actually very simple. You need to create some kind of injustice, create some scene or some kind of situation that is completely unjust. The character has done nothing to deserve their fate. An unfortunate event has simply occurred that has caused them such pain. In Interstellar, this focuses on Murph, who was unfairly ripped away from her father, which makes this infamous scene in Interstellar so heart-wrenching, because Murph has grown up her whole life without her father. He has been in space for a few months, but on Earth time passes differently, and it ends up being about 30 years. So the injustice of the situation from Murph's point of view is huge. Or in A Monster Calls, when Connor's mum dies, it is completely unjustified. A boy who's been bullied at school and suffering the pressures of his parents' divorce and never sees his father also has to let go of his mother. The injustice of the situation is stifling and invokes such a strong feeling of empathy from the reader, which in turn can make you cry. The third emotion is fear. Fear is also very simple, easy emotion to evoke in the reader, since it relies so heavily on one simple concept: give the villain all the power. The concept is executed perfectly in almost every horror movie, and it is no surprise that in horror movies the villain almost always wins. The perfect example is Arthur Kipps, along with the entire village, are completely helpless to the woman in black. She has all the power. It sounds extreme, and perhaps it is, but it works so well. The more power you give to the villain and the less power you give to the protagonist, the more terrifying the scene. If you want to create a story with a happy ending, but you still want to have a high level of fear, then it would probably involve a very narrow and lucky escape for the protagonist, like in the 4th Harry Potter movie when Voldemort seems to have all the power and control, yet Harry is still able to escape by the skin of his teeth. The 4th emotion is surprise. This is also very interesting. It is very easy to surprise the audience. All you need to do is to create a totally unexpected outcome to the story that none of the readers will expect. But this is a bad idea. Sure, if you completely surprise the audience and there's absolutely no way that they could see see the plot twist coming, it leaves them shocked for a few seconds, but that's it. Here is how you should use surprise to create a lasting effect on the reader. You should reveal just enough information throughout the story so that it's possible to potentially guess the ending. So you have to hit a fine balance of leaving just enough clues so that the reader starts to suspect something, and then when the plot twist or the surprise actually happens, it's much more satisfying. Scooby-Doo follows this principle so well, it leaves clues throughout the story that hint at the ending. Or in Harry Potter, when Professor Quirrell purposely doesn't shake Harry's hand. A bad surprise is when there are no clues whatsoever, and there is really no way the audience could have seen the surprise coming. A good surprise is one where, if the reader is clever and observant, he could potentially work it out before the end. This is what makes murder mystery novels so successful. The fifth emotion is contentment. This is very similar to Fascination, but it isn't so extreme. Contentment is just that happy, nostalgic, jovial feeling you get when watching scenes that are just nice. For example, happy endings that leave the reader going to bed feeling happy, the bad guy lost, and the world is okay again. Or another example is scenes created by jokers, you know, Fred and George, Merry and Pippin, C-3PO and R2-D2, basically comedy. Or you can create contentment with establishing scenes, for example that opening scene in the Shire. Sure, it creates such fascination, but it also makes you just want to go there because it's such a happy scene. And some scenes can either create fascination or contentment depending on when you watch it. Watching Harry enter Hogwarts for the first time creates intense fascination, but watching him enter Hogwarts for the 20th time creates a kind of nostalgic contentment. It is vital to create contentment in your story. Moments of calm, moments of happiness before the storm, when someone achieves a small goal, when Gandalf arrives, when Harry catches the snitch, or every single moment with Olaf. Contentment can also be described as happiness, joy, comedy, or laughter, anything that makes the readers feel good. You can incorporate this into your story through humor, or if a character overcomes fears. For example, Han Solo finally risking his life to save others. A good rule of thumb is if the scene makes you feel warm inside, then you should use it in your story. The sixth emotion is anger. Again, this is very similar to sadness, because to create sadness, you need to create some kind of injustice, and it's the same with anger. To create anger, you need to create a terrible injustice, but there is a key difference, and this is the sentence that I believe best describes how to create anger. To create anger, you need the injustice to be caused by another human being who has the power to stop the injustice, but they don't. In torture scenes, it's likely that you feel both fear and anger because the torturer usually has all the power and they have the power to stop the injustice of torture. In Interstellar, Cooper has the power not to go to space and to create the injustice of leaving his family behind, but by going to space he causes a lot of pain for his family, and this creates intense anger in his daughter Murph. However, in most cases you should try to avoid using too much anger. The other 5 emotions are really what the reader wants to feel when they read. Anger is only in special circumstances. So these were the 6 emotions that drive any story. I hope that it was useful for your story and that you can use this as a guide to creating emotion. And if you enjoyed, give it a like and comment what is your favourite book or film and why do you think is your favourite now. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.